Okay, hello and welcome to Live from America podcast. This is Hatem, alongside me Noam Dworman, owner of the Comedy Cellar. Hello, Noam.
Hello, Hatem.
Long time no see. Speaking long time no see, a good friend of mine, haven't seen you for years. Bassam Rifai is here. Hello, Bassam. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Hatem?
He is a political advisor and government relations board member for the Syrian American Council. Previously, he was a foreign policy advisor for the Hillary Clinton campaign. He also served as a government relations and foreign affairs commentator on CNN, Fox News, Vice News, and of course, the one and only Al Jazeera. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you, man.
Good to
Good
see
time to be a political advisor, huh?
Yeah, it's a crazy world we live in.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Damn it.
What do you think about the Jews? Do it again. Just do it again. So first of all,
Yeah, what do you think of the Jews killing the Iranian president?
Uh, I mean, listen, in all honesty, there's a lot of speculation about whether it was actually a missile who shot down the helicopter. Um, what I know is that he was going north, and they entered some fog, and that the helicopter crashed and he died. I don't know that there's any evidence to a missile actually hitting their helicopter. I think they're still um, investigating it and looking into what might have actually happened. Um, but I don't, if I'm being honest, don't think it's the end of the world. I don't
Well,
think it was the most terrible thing.
yeah, well, I think they said it's an inside job, but I do think that there's a Mossad agent. His name is Helicopter.
Yeah.
And he is on nothing on that, no?
That's a pretty good pseudonym there.
Yeah, Helicopter was the Mossad agent that killed him. No, no,
Yeah.
what do you think?
what do I think? Whether Israel did it or not?
Yeah.
It's possible. I mean, would they do it? I don't know. I mean, Iran is not saying that they did it, but I could also see why Iran might not want to say they did it because then Iran would have to respond, and maybe they don't feel like getting into that right now. I don't know. I don't know.
I agree with you. I don't think that Israel did it because I don't think this specific leader will make any difference, you know? But
No, we send a message, a very powerful message from the Israelis that, we can get you wherever you are, anytime we want.
So here's
that's
the
what
thing.
my lawyers tell me.
This
I'm on
this
fire today.
this was the biggest no news because the real power in Iran really sits with the Ayatollah. So the reality is that he didn't the president of Iran, he didn't really actually have any real power. Now, there was speculation that he was going to be the successor to the Ayatollah. Um, and so, in that regard, they're kind of scrambling around trying to figure out, well, who's going to fill that spot now. And I think what's most likely going to happen is in typical Middle Eastern fashion that the successor for the Ayatollah is going to be his son.
Yeah, that's what they say. But his son is kind of weak, so they think that it might be the military as well. So, which also typical for Middle East.
Yeah.
Don't
The
you
we
miss when Trump was president? We will know who done what.
Yeah.
He will come out and says, "Ah, well, I did it."
Fake news.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. No, first, what do you think of the, those some sparks outrage over, the moment of silence and the United States took part of that and they said we should not have done that for somebody who was known as a butcher in Iran, killed a lot of people in Iran, not only in the world. But what do you think of that?
it's one of these things. I mean, people just there's a daily, thing to get upset about. I mean, would I find it satisfying if America broke protocol and, did that? Yes, of course, I'd find that satisfying. Do I criticize my government for not wanting to do that? No. I get it. They don't want to set a precedent. Then the next leader that dies, and it just becomes a tit for tat. and I'm okay with it.
Bassam, what do you think?
I mean, no, I get what you're saying, and I get where you're coming from, and I'm all for, decorum and following those norms. But we as the United States, we're all about human rights and democracy and free speech and everything that goes along with that, right? And then here's this country that's consistently violating human rights. That he was, Hatem, you said it. He was known for being oppressive to his own people. It's just a bit hypocritical, is all it is.
Well,
would I have liked to have seen, us not stand up for that? Yeah, I would. I also get why we would, though.
yeah, I mean, we have nothing stopping us from saying and making any statement, saying anything we want about this guy. But let's just remember when Trump ham-handedly looked the other way when, what was his name? Was it Khashoggi, the journalist? Was killed. And then Biden said, we should make Saudi Arabia a pariah state and blah, 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 blah. And then, fast forward, Biden's sucking up to the Saudis again and looking weak and hypocritical. That's what often comes of this kind of posturing. And I guess it's just over my head. I just don't want to judge everything that everybody does at this point. It doesn't really matter. What really matters is what the substantial things, the substantive things that we do.
And they did say that the general policies is not changes. We look at him and the Iran same way. I do understand, one thing to do with out of respect to the Iranian people, maybe. I get that, but
yeah, but tomorrow the leader of China is going to die, and we're not going to stand up for the leader of China when they have 2,000 Muslims in concentration camps.
Yeah.
You didn't care about the Chinese guy, but you were upset about the Iranian guy because it was easy for you, and you could just see the problems down the road from this kind of thing. Which is not to say maybe the short-term benefits don't outweigh the problems in the future, but I'm not sure what the short-term benefits are.
Yeah, we all making so much sense here and being so reasonable. So let me find something that we will fight over. Here we go.
Oh boy.
The ICC, the ICC chief prosecutor requested to issue arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Golet. What do you think of that? Bassam, what do you think first?
I mean, listen, Benjamin Netanyahu, he's gone very far to the right of right extreme in Israel. I don't agree at all with his politics. I never have, but I will at least say that in previous years he was slightly more centrist. And to see the extent of what he's doing now and what he's planning on doing, both him and the defense minister, it's disgusting, and it is a violation of human rights. It doesn't negate what did happen and what sparked what's going on now. It doesn't negate that at all, but that doesn't mean that you have carte blanche to go ahead and kill children and destroy families and tear people apart. So I think it's also a little bit of posturing, but I don't think anything is going to come of it either. But I to see what does actually come of it.
All right, this is absolutely, respectfully, not only is this wrong, I think what you're saying, but I don't even think it can hold up. So first of all, correct me if I'm wrong. The warrant is about the aid, isn't it? The warrant is not.
A few things.
What is the warrant about?
One of them is for the using starvation as a method.
Yeah, about the aid. Yeah.
And I don't remember the second one.
I don't think it's about the war. So first of all, there have been so many very, very clear analyses done by now comparing the ratios, the number of people killed, the civilian deaths in Israel to all the American actions in Rafah and Mosul, in Mosul and what's the other one? Raqqa. That's why I said Rafah. In Raqqa and Mosul, and various other wars around. Israel is better than most. John Spencer, the world's expert on urban warfare, has written extensively on the things that Israel has done that other countries don't even attempt to do. You can disagree with the war. You can think it's unjust. There's nothing novel or unique about the way Israel's fighting this war. As for the aid, I mean, didn't we notice that America had to suspend its aid this week because it all got to the pier and then America wasn't able to get it through without being stolen to the Palestinian people? The same thing the Israelis had been telling us was their problem. Number three, why Netanyahu and Gallant? That they're just two members of the war cabinet. They don't make unilateral decisions. Number four, what about Bashar al-Assad? What about all these other leaders? What about whoever's running the Ethiopians and who's running the Yemenis and the Houthis? I mean, there's so many leaders out there. They've passed over without warrants. All of a sudden now they're picking on the country that is getting rockets still to this day, rockets coming into their cities, that the cities are abandoned, that after October 7th, I mean, this is just a perversion of the notion of any kind of even-handed enforcement of international law. Having said all that, do I know that Israel's obeyed the text and letter of every single aspect of international law? No, I don't know that. Do I think that any country has fought a war with a perfect record? No, I don't think that. But obviously, this is political. There's nothing in their past which would indicate to us to have expected a warrant against Netanyahu based on what they've done in all the, we're talking 30,000 deaths in Israel. We're talking about millions of deaths in the Middle East over the last 10 years. This ICC did not lift a finger to take action about. Who are we kidding here?
Again, you're talking about the war, while, you know, the warrant specifically for using starvation. I mean, I'll read you the stuff.
They didn't use starvation. There's no starvation going on in Gaza.
What?
There's not starvation going on in Gaza. I've heard reports that 20 people have starved. I don't know if they're true or not true, but we see video every day of people that on the streets in Gaza. We know what starvation looks like.
Okay, first of all, let me
I'm not saying there's not food anxiety. I'm not saying that Israel done everything right. I don't know, but we also know, we know that way more food aid has been delivered than was needed. We know that Hamas has threatened to execute any Palestinian who was caught helping Israel deliver the aid.
Okay,
we know this stuff.
You're talking about Hamas now. I want to talk about Israel. You know, so
yeah,
let me ask
I'm
you
saying we know we have there's no question that the amount of food that's been delivered has been adequate, you know, to the border. There's no basis for starvation except the fact that the food is not getting into to the Palestinian people. But again, here's my point. Why Netanyahu and Gallant? Why not? They don't make unilateral decisions. It doesn't even make sense on his face. And by the way, Egypt this week suspended aid to Gaza, right? Why aren't they being brought before the ICC? They're not even the one. Like Israel at least can say, listen, we're at war with these people. Do you expect us to do everything we can to help them at the same time we're fighting a war? Egypt is not at war with the Palestinians, yet Egypt this week shut down the aid. I don't see any starvation accusation.
Israel is at war with Hamas, not the Palestinian people, though.
No, Israel is at war with the Hamas is the leadership, and Israel's at war with that entity. Israel doesn't have the right to kill civilians, But if I say Israel's at war with Germany, you say, no, Israel's at war with the Nazis. No, the Nazis are in charge of Germany. Israel's at war with, we were at war with Germany. We were not at war with the Emperor of Japan. We were at war with Japan. That doesn't mean it was okay to drop the atom bomb, but we're not at war just with the government. They elected that government. They're a political entity. I've never heard any war ever described as just being at war with the leadership.
So,
Well, all right,
so
Bassam, go ahead, and then I'll respond.
I'm just going to touch on that specific point real quick. So I hate to quote him, but Benjamin Netanyahu was actually quoted in saying that, and this isn't a direct quote, but the gist of what he had said was that he was going to go into Rafah, and that he was going to remove Hamas so that the people were no longer, until he was going to continue until he removed Hamas, so that the people wouldn't be Hamas anymore.
Yeah, just like that's the same kind of stuff we said about Iraq. We were going into remove the Baathists, but we were at war with Iraq. I mean, no, we invaded Iraq. I mean, this is semantics. If you're trying to pretend that I'm saying that means that the Palestinian people are fair game. No, of course not. What I'm saying is that Israel is fighting a war with the very people who are responsible for delivering the aid to these people.
Sure.
That's a difficult thing. And, you know, I didn't want to get into this. All I'm saying is that at the same time, Egypt, who is Arab, who is not at war, has also suspended aid.
You keep saying that like it's, first of all, I don't know. You're talking about closing, not suspending, but closing the cross path between them because
no more aid. No more aid's coming out of Egypt, as far as I understand it.
Because well, Egypt is a different story. I'll talk about later because of what happened in the negotiation when they changed some of the stuff.
Egypt has a good reason, but the Israelis
No, I didn't say
don't.
Egypt has a good reason. I don't say that your information is correct. But I want to take one point at a time so we can get. First of all, just to listen, this is not the first time that international leaders. This is the first democracy, but this is not the first time that they went to court. You know, or that there's issue warrants.
Who else was issue warrant?
For what?
Who else did they want? Putin?
You don't think Putin was issued a warrant?
I don't know. I'm asking. Was Putin issued? I think he
Yes.
probably was.
Yes,
So,
he was.
so
there's 54 that were issue warrants. There's a lot of Mohammeds here and Ahmeds and Arabs. Nobody cares, obviously. See all this. So if we go with the latest, you'll see here Vladimir Putin right here, you know, in 23. And these are, you know, and there's so many
Warrants for what? What are these warrants for?
From the criminal court.
Yeah, but these are not leaders, heads of state.
Putin's not head of state.
No, all right, okay.
No, some of them, Gaddafi,
All
you
right.
know, leader of state. But anyway, so there's more than, you know, it's not the first time that this has happened. So
Listen, this is
first
the
time-
bottom line. 1 second. Putin, we know what he did. Can you take that off?
Sure. Omar Bashir from Sudan.
Israel is a democracy that is making decisions with lawyers, by the way, in the room about what they can and can't do. They send knock bombs. They drop flyers. They make cell phone calls. They are dealing with human shields, tunnels. They're dealing with a leadership which literally says, "We want our martyrs to die. This is our only strategy here is to have our civilians die." They have threatened. Hamas has threatened to kill anybody who delivers aid. Hamas steals the aid. We've seen the video of it. All of this is on one side. And now they're saying that Netanyahu is a war criminal, along with the guy who masterminded October 7th. And if you think that makes sense to you in the context of those two people and in the context of the world, what can I tell you? I disagree.
Well, here's what I want to say, because I want to take one point at a time, because I think that it's important to. So the first thing you said.
Is there any evidence that Israel's trying to starve them?
Of course, there's evidence.
What?
But let me just answer
What
one
evidence?
thing. Hold on. Let me answer one thing at a time from what you said. The first thing is, you know, why Netanyahu and one leader, and I showed you a list of leaders. You know, there's generals under them that did horrible things, you know, and
Those
they
are not
still can do.
leaders. Those are not heads of state.
What's that?
Those are not heads of state.
Putin has said Bashir is a
Bashir
Gaddafi,
wasn't. There was no warrant against Bashir al-Assad, was there?
not Bashir from Sudan, not Bashar. Oh, I
Sudan.
forgot. You don't speak Arabic.
Listen,
There was-
Hatem.
Bashir and Bashar is different.
Hatem, it's upsetting me because it just seems obviously political. If you want to compare Netanyahu to Yahya Sinwar, fine.
I'm not comparing anybody. Here's what I want to say.
Let's move on.
I'm gonna move on, but I want
because it's cutting me like a knife, and I'm going to stipulate that you're right. I don't want to have this argument because, and I'm not. And this is the first time I've ever said anything like this. It's making me sick to my stomach, and you can only have this argument either with total lack of information, or total bias, or some combination of the two.
that's not fair. Or I have a lot of information.
Then tell me the proof or the probable cause.
Well, I will.
Netanyahu is trying to starve the Gazans.
No, I will say it is fair though for you to say that you can only have this conversation without any information or without any bias, because it is an extremely emotional subject and it is an extremely sensitive subject. And no matter what, no matter how much you try to remove bias out of the equation, it's going to be there.
No. This is the thing. If somebody said to me, listen, Noam, I agree with this because A, B, C, this is the evidence that Netanyahu was trying to starve the Gazans, I would have to listen to that. But since we're not going to get into any details, but just deal on broad impressions and some quote from October 9th where Gallant says, we're fighting human animals. This is so fuzzy. I don't think it's an educated conversation. I don't think it's a scholarly conversation. And I don't think there's anything to be had from this. We know what Sinwar did. We have the video evidence. We have all the evidence. I have not seen any evidence that there is a policy of Israel to starve Gazans, nor have I seen starvation. But as I said, what we do know very clearly is that Hamas has done everything it can to obstruct the delivery of aid. And we know that even America just now failed in its attempt to deliver aid. So to a fair-minded person, I would think they would say, you know what? How could I possibly feel that I know what's going on there when I know that even America can't deliver the aid? That alone would be enough to say, like, you know what? I'm going to need very clear proof that they're trying to starve people, when I know that Israel could literally just leave 1,000 tons of aid on the at the border there, and it would still not get to the Palestinian people because Hamas would make sure it didn't.
I will tell you, at least from my experience with Syria, that we do a terrible job of how we deliver aid.
Yeah, that's true. That's not intentionally starving people. That's the point.
But Noam, it's interesting. Like, respectfully, you say your opinion and you put your points, and when I try to say my point, is like,
give me some facts, or let's move on.
No.
Give me some facts.
No. You're not
I'm listing only facts to you. I'm not giving my opinion. I'm listing facts to you.
What facts have you listened? Prove to me that Israel did not. Prove it. All right. It's the same thing, But the point is,
did you just say prove to me that Israel did not?
They did not commit crimes that they said they did.
Okay, fair enough. I can't prove that, so I guess you're right.
And here's from Human Rights Watch. Israel's used weaponization, starvation used as weaponization in Israel, and this is a whole article about this. Well, I guess
it's true then.
What I'm saying is this, of course they're gonna be different information. Of course, everybody's gonna be biased, like you said. But there's also my point. What I'm trying to say is, like, I think that, and we talked about this before, being in a war, everybody in a war committed crime, including George Bush, including a lot of people, obviously so many in the Middle East. I think people need to be held accountable for what they do. That's my only point. And I think that you can look certain way and you can be named certain way and you can be very clean, very well spoken, and you still be a war criminal. You don't have to be only Gaddafi or Hamas.
Hassan, you nailed it. I can't
Not
prove to you.
Hassan. Hatem.
I
Did
mean,
you call me
Hatem.
Hassan? Oh my
Hatem.
God.
All right, please cut
We're all
that out.
Oh my God, he called me Hatem.
I'm reading something at the same time I'm talking to you.
I'm 30. Okay. All right, so let's move to
No, I can't prove to you. I think it was a combination of Hatem and Bassam. Please,
Bassam.
can you please, whatever. I can't prove to you that it's not true.
Yeah.
And the subtext of what I'm saying is that everybody knows you can't prove a negative. So when you say to me that, I'm like, all right, I'm going to let the listeners decide for themselves what to make of your argument.
Sure, but it's not my argument because I just also watch you the human watch list, and if people go to the ICC itself in the warrant, they have proof, that's, again, like when we talk about topics like this, it's just like, I think there's bias from both sides. If you say anything about Netanyahu, then you'll be like, oh, you'll be trying to be just political, try to score a point. What's happening in Gaza?
Again,
and what?
Hold on. Netanyahu does not make the decisions.
I agree.
There is a war cabinet of 3 voting members, a number of observers, and lawyers in the room. So if even within their own logic, why would they arrest Netanyahu and Gallant?
Well, isn't it interesting though that in that cabinet of 3, that 2 of them are threatening to walk out?
Not over this issue.
I'm not talking about aid, but they're over the issue of going into Rafah. The issue.
They're not even. It's not even over the issue of Rafah. They're
all
all united.
They're staying in Gaza.
They're all united around Rafah. They're threatening to walk out because they feel that Netanyahu is not announcing, which was his political obligation, as far as I understand it, what Israel's policy will be in Gaza after the war.
Yeah. That's the reason that they want to move on. But as I said, like, I think if Netanyahu as the leader, that's why he's there. But anybody that commits a war crime should be prosecuted. Anybody, and especially in this time.
Prosecuted by who? By some.
Actually, prosecuted by their own.
I don't even think this ICC is America a member of the ICC?
No,
court?
America and Israel are not.
So they should be prosecuted by people who never even agreed to allow. In other words, who gives them the right to prosecute America and Israel?
Well, what he said, they're not prosecuting America. What he said is, if Israel would go right now into it, they will have jurisdiction of it. So they will do their own thing. Again, why is it when the United Nations and stuff like that, democracy doesn't matter if people vote? Like, we should help people accountable. We should be watching what's happening. If you have every right to defend yourself, you have every right to do all this. But
Hatem,
let's move on.
Present evidence, real proof that there is a policy of starvation. And by the way, along with that, you have to present the starvation, because we're 8 months into this. If that Human Rights Watch said in December that Israel was starving the Palestinian people, by the following May, we'd expect to see a lot of dead people. Now, I of course, as I'm saying this, even without knowing the subject matter, I'm sure there's something short of dying, which could still be called starvation, where you could just not people have enough food and suffering and anxiety. And I don't want to speak dumbly about this issue.
Okay.
But the one thing that does keep coming to the front of my mind is that we know that Hamas has a policy of making it as impossible as they can for anybody to deliver aid to the Palestinian people. I haven't heard anybody dispute that. In that light, I would think a fair-minded person would tread very lightly before they started blaming Israel for what's going on with the delivery of aid when we know the following. We know the absolute amount of aid that has been queued up for delivery. We know everything I've said already, that Hamas has threatened to kill anybody helps. We know that Egypt has shut down aid for its own reasons. We know that America has failed to deliver aid. We know that there are lawyers in the room.
How do we
All
know
that.
that?
How do we know what?
That there's lawyers in the room.
Well, you and I know this because Michel Paradis told us.
Yeah, but he's not in the room either. Like, so he knows.
Well, it's well reported in the news. I'm just giving an expert that I know you trust. Everybody knows. Anybody who follows it knows this.
Well, as I said, I think there's a lot of evidence, like I showed you now, and I look at the I don't know if it's and I'm sure that the listeners can also find all the stuff. If you look at the organization, the human rights, that there's reports after report that there's crazy things going on in Gaza. We cannot say this is not happening.
What's not happening?
That there's no starvation.
So, listen, if you Google now, you're going to find headlines about starvation in Iraq during the Iraq War. As a matter of fact, I bet you're going to find headlines about food problems in every war you can look up, because it's not easy logistically to feed comfortably an entire population in the middle of a war. But what Israel's facing that we didn't face in Iraq is that the enemy actually is the one who wants to starve the Palestinians. If you were to give the Israeli leaders a lie detector test, or Hamas leaders a lie detector test, who do you think would come out more honestly that they feel they benefit by the Palestinian people starving? Do you think the Israelis are so stupid that they don't realize that starving the Palestinians completely undermines their war effort here? That America is withholding weapons, that the American people are turning against Israel, that the world's turning against Israel, that there's nothing to be gained by starving Palestinians? We know Israelis. These are not stupid people. They're strategizing. They're strategizing by committee here. Someone's got to make the argument, no. I got an idea. Let's starve them to death. And they'll say, well, what does that get us? So it's just not plausible. But Hamas, they know exactly why they want to starve the Palestinians.
So when
they're coming in their pants because of this ICC thing, because they don't have a military strategy. They have a public relations strategy. If a starving, God forbid, bloated, starving Palestinian child shows up on TV from Gaza, what do you think is the vital signs of Hamas when they watch it? And what do you think Netanyahu thinks? Netanyahu says, in my opinion, says, Jesus Christ, this is awful. This is terrible for us. What can we do about this? And Sinwar says, fantastic. This is how we win.
But again,
that basic dynamic is so obvious to a fair-minded person.
But you keep saying that. You keep saying that.
Yes. Because I believe it. Because I actually believe that no fair-minded person could see it differently. And I almost never say that.
Listen to me. I'm not saying Hamas is not. We agree on that. We've been agreeing on that. What I'm saying is you keep talking about Hamas like it's Palestinian people. When Israel do the free zone.
I don't I don't keep talking about Hamas like it's Palestinian people. I just said exactly the opposite. I said if some poor Palestinian person is starving, what is Sinwar thinking? You got to stop doing that. I did not say that.
Yeah, listen, you said that Hamas benefit more from starving the Israeli, which is true.
No,
we know that.
Starving the
Palestinians, I'm sorry, which is true. But what I'm saying is the case is the Palestinian. We don't want to bring Hamas to every conversation. Hamas is awful. Hamas did this. Hamas did that. But now Israel have free zones. Right?
Let's move on.
No. Why you always say your point?
Because I'm not buying this, and it's upsetting me. I can't even tell you how it's upsetting me. It's to be honest. These things you're saying are flailing to me. The notion that I can't prove that they're not is the last refuge of any bad argument. It's what you say when you have no evidence. I've spelled it out to you as best I can.
Just show you.
And let's just agree to disagree.
Well, I agree to disagree. But for the record, I just show you the Human Rights Watch report.
Human Rights Watch, watch my interview with Ken Roth. Human Rights Watch prints whatever it prints. That is not evidence of anything. That was December. As I said, Human Rights Watch said in December that there is some evidence that there might be, it says, I can't even find it. I had it a second ago. That's what I was reading. Hold on. Human Rights Watch is a very, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, Human Rights Watch is just part of the flawed, they've have so much egg on their face, like the Goldstone report. You know how many articles Human Rights Watch did about the Goldstone report before Goldstone himself came out and said, no, you got it wrong?
Well, I guess, we agree to disagree. Like
Israel government is using starvation as the war in the Gaza Strip, which is a war crime. Israel officials have made statements expressing their aim to deprive civilians of Gaza food, water, and fuel. The Israeli government should not attack objects. So in December, they say Israel was deliberately blocking delivery of water, food, and fuel during the siege in December. Now, that may or may not be true. It may or may not be a war crime. Now, that's December. Here we are in May. Now it's no longer a matter of conjecture. Either they're starving or they're not. Either there's not a, now we know. I mean, should we want to get into this? Have you read the articles that catalog the tonnage of aid that has been delivered over the last few months?
Well, I read a lot of things about this topic, so just like a lot of people did, and I think there's facts. Bassam, I wanna move to Iran, Hezbollah, Syria. What's Hezbollah's? Are they in Syria anymore, or are they majorly in Lebanon?
No, they're still in Syria. They're still terrorizing people there. They're still taking people's homes. They're still committing war crimes.
Yeah. And this is one of the things I always tell people is like, when you see what ISIS and Hezbollah and Hamas did to their own people, it will come no surprise what they do to the others, because it's been going like this forever. What do you think Hezbollah's role in all this, and what should Israel and the world do to like
Hatem,
yeah.
Hatem, why is the ICC not have a warrant against the Syrian leadership? Do they?
I believe they do actually. No.
Do they?
Against as they should.
Yeah, as they definitely, and they should have done. Oh, did you see? Oh no, I remember the video I sent to you about Mubarak, and I told you I'm gonna translate it to you. So it's a conversation that happened between Mubarak and Rabin, and he was talking, Mubarak, the former president of Egypt, how Rabin was telling Bashar al-Assad that he will give him Golan and he'll give him everything for nothing, but just because he want peace. But anyway, we'll talk about this later when I see it. But yeah, Bassam, go ahead with Hezbollah, and what should the world do, and tell us a little bit about Hezbollah, people that don't know.
I mean,
no warrant against Assad. I just looked it up, at least as of March 30th.
I mean, I'm almost positive that there was. I don't know what might have happened with it or not. That being said, regardless if there's not, then there absolutely should be, because Assad.
But the question is, why wouldn't there be? The obvious reason is politics. It can't be the merits. It can't be the merits of the case. Israel can't be a stronger case than Assad. So it's got to be politics.
Assad is, and both of them actually, not just the.
Yeah, but I'm saying, so this is why Israel is furious. But go ahead. I didn't mean to sidetrack you. Go ahead.
I mean, if you want to talk about Hezbollah and talk about Iran and the Ayatollah there, and the president in Iran dying, in the region amongst the people, like Hatem was saying, there's really no love lost for him dying. There's no love for Hezbollah amongst the people. They're brutal to their own people. They're brutal to their own people. They suppress freedoms of speech. They suppress.
What is the strategy? What is Hezbollah's strategy? I never know that. What is it that they want?
To rule by fear. That's really what it is. To rule by fear. When you talk about Hezbollah and when you talk about what their objectives are and their strategy. I very much understand where Israel's coming from, because Hezbollah and the Ayatollah have always said that they want to rule, all the way through into Israel, and to conquer into that territory. And that's never been something that any of the people wanted. So their strategy is purely domination. That's really all what it is.
Are they motivating or motivated people by, because we had an expert on Iran last week, and he was saying that Iran is promoting the destruction of Israel, one of their major thing. Is that the same thing with Hezbollah?
Yeah, for sure it is. I mean, it's
I thought they started as they want to liberate the Golan Heights. Is that how they started, or no? Or now they want,
yeah, but Assad is Hafiz al-Assad had pretty much just given away the Golan Heights many years ago, and Hezbollah has morphed into same deal to create domination and to go back to take back Golan and in opposition to Israel and the Israeli people. And you can't go into Lebanon, you can't go into anywhere that Hezbollah occupies and controls, and say anything that's in support of Israel. That's for sure.
Do you think Israel should attack Hezbollah? Would they do something like October 7th?
Say it again?
Would Hezbollah do something like October 7th? I mean, we know they fly missiles now, but
I mean, I have no idea what Hezbollah is or isn't capable of. I think that in whole they're very dangerous, and that I would want to suppress Hezbollah. Sure, yeah.
I just put two tweets in the chat. Hatem, I'd appreciate it if you'd paste them into the notes on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, sure.
They're very detailed. One is just from
Hamas police killed citizen while he was trying to obtain humanitarian aid reaching Gaza. Yeah, there's a couple of videos.
And one is just from today or yesterday. Is a long thread by a guy named Eisenberg, who documents in great detail all the facts about the delivery of aid. So I invite everybody to listen, to read it.
But no, I'm just on that. I'm not saying that you're wrong or not discrediting either one of these items. But that's, again, focused back on Hamas and not necessarily on the Palestinian people.
No. The other thread doesn't. Listen, can I share my screen for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just. Okay.
Not the video. I don't think YouTube is gonna. Yeah.
You see that? This is the blue. These are truckloads of aid coming in. The first one here where my cursor, as you can see, is November 2nd, November 11th. So obviously, they didn't need aid on day one, and you can see already this is a lot of blue bars here, and so the question would have to be, what would it look like if Israel didn't have a policy of starvation? Now, of course, I can't swear that these statistics are correct, but someone who it's the burden of proof is on someone else to say it's not correct. These are Gaza-dashboard.unrwa.org. So this is supposedly a UN certified stat. This just, I don't think, if you will look at the similar stats of and let's make no mistake about it, this is the illusion of for instance, when the Nazis were starving the Warsaw Ghetto, per capita, I don't think you're going to see those blue bars representing the Nazi delivery of aid when they had a policy of starvation. It's just, to me, a very tall order to believe that. I will believe it. Hatem knows me. I'm not a so stubborn that I will look away from facts. I will look at the facts. God forbid if Israel was trying to starve Gaza. As a matter of fact, I said on this podcast, I wondered if Israel, at one time, I wondered if Israel was slow rolling some things because they were trying to make things difficult. You know, I wondered about that. I wondered about that out loud. I even asked some Haaretz reporters about that on my own podcast. I asked them directly about that. And Haaretz, you know, is a pretty anti-Israel, you know, it's like left-wing Israel stuff. And they assured me, two different Haaretz, they assured me, no, that's not the case. As a matter of fact, the one thing that that I've noticed among the very anti-government reporters in Israel, at least the two that I spoke to and others I read, they have not co-signed this notion that Israel was trying to starve the Gazans. I also spoke to people I know who are critical of the government, who are in the know, and they told me it's not true. Now, I don't expect anybody to take that as evidence. I'm just telling you to you guys because you might trust me enough to believe that that's substantial. I am on the lookout for evidence. But,
No,
you know, an angry quote, I'm sorry, the last thing, an angry quote from Gallant on October 9th, we're fighting human animals, is not to me
I agree with
evidence.
that. I thought when the
let Bassam,
ICC,
let
yeah,
Bassam answer.
I just gonna say that, yeah, I agree. When he used that quote, I think that it's stupid because he can get a lot of quotes. Go ahead, Bassam.
no, I'm not gonna. I don't want to lead down the rabbit hole of this either.
Yeah.
I just want to say though that in the analogy of the Nazis in Germany, and comparing it to today's world and what's happening in Palestine, no, I get what you're saying, you know, but we're making the distinction between Hamas and the Palestinian people because if you are fighting a war, whether it's Israel or whether it's Germany or whether it's any other country in the world, if you are fighting a war against an enemy and your aim is to not hurt civilians, then the burden is and should be on you in order to protect those civilians and in order to make sure that those civilians are able to
Bassam,
eat.
I agree with you 1,000%. And I don't think I ever said anything to conflate Hamas and the Palestinians except to saying that we're fighting a war against that entity, which includes the civilians and the government. Like every war includes the civilians and the government. Listen, if you would ask a Palestinian, not a Hamas, a Palestinian, are you at war with Israel? They would say, yes, we're at war with Israel. They wouldn't say we're a third party here. They would, I believe they would say, my people are fighting their people. I'm a civilian. My government is the I don't agree with my government, but they know it's their government. They elected them. They might even be a dictatorship. They still know it's their government. They're the ones who provide their schools, their police force, their roads. This is their government. They're the people they appeal to for courts of law. That's their government. The government is fighting.
Yeah. Obviously, this is very anecdotal, but I know lots and lots and lots and lots of Palestinians that say, you know, otherwise, that wouldn't say I'm at war with the Israeli people, that they're at war with the Israeli government.
No, with Israel, nobody. Okay, we don't actually disagree. I just want to state for the record, nobody speaks this way. You're speaking with a microscope, a semantic microscope that I've never heard before. When we said we're at war with Iraq, educated people understand all the gradations of when you're at war with the government, when the civilians, whatever it is. There is listen, I've said I would like Israel to be airdropping aid. I want everybody to have a fat, full stomach in Gaza, every Palestinian person. I'm deeply not conflicted even. I'm deeply moved by what these people are going through, more than I've ever been moved before, not just because it's on pictures, but because this is the closest to home war to me since I've been a parent, I think, is what it is. And somehow being a parent and imagining this for my family, my children, has taken an emotional toll on me more than when I was younger. I can't say so. There's nothing like I'm not callous about this.
But my point wasn't to get into the semantics of it. No, my point was they get into saying that if you are at war in a land, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The burden is on you to.
Well, okay, that's maybe the burden is on you to do what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But one could certainly argue, as a legal matter, and maybe not as what I would say, but I would agree to as policy, say, listen, our obligation is to deliver that aid. If their government, what their government does with it beyond that, is beyond our responsibilities here in the middle of a war. We are making sure that food gets into Gaza. We're actually trying to take over Gaza, in which case we could make sure the food gets to them. But you can't hold, essentially, at some point, when the aid is not getting to the Palestinian people, this is not Israel's fault beyond the fact that Israel is not winning the war. You know, they don't have the magic wand to deliver the aid because they are fighting a war with the people who are trying to obstruct the delivery of that aid. And that dynamic is so complicated in the light of the various people who have not been served warrants, in the light of the truckloads that have been sent there. I would have a very queasy feeling in my stomach before I want to go on a podcast and say, no, this was a fair warrant. When I think what is clear to me, what happened here was, what's going on here is they say, we're not going to get away easily with issuing a warrant to Sinwar. It's going to look like we're letting Israel off the hook if we don't do it to them too, because the world is going to just eviscerate us if we issue a warrant against Hamas and not against Israel. And the politics, and by the way, politics plays a part in American courts too. Don't get me wrong. This is not the only court affected by politics. But it's hard for me to see this as anything other than a political decision in light of their other warrants that they've talked about issuing, have issued. I don't think they've actually issued the warrant against Israel, right?
No, not yet. I don't think it's going to happen. But, you know, just to your point, like Sinwar, I don't think that people would be shocked if Sinwar was issued without Israel. I'm surprised that he wasn't issued before that.
But if he is issued without Israel, people are gonna scream bloody murder because people are on fire about this topic. I get it.
Yeah, but again, I think Michelle Paradis also made the exact point that Bassam made was, you know, when you start a war, you kind of have to be you're responsible for it.
But they didn't start the war.
Well, start the attack if you're attacking. You know, if you wanna, Israel is one invading Gaza, so that's
Listen,
on
Hatem,
them.
do you in your private moments ever say to yourself,
oh, well, I do other stuff in my private moments.
why? I know, Hatem, that what I'm complaining about Israel has been true for other countries all over the world every day of the week. I've never found myself saying these things before until today. Nothing bothered me. Nothing bothered me. I'm a Muslim. There's 2 million Muslims starving in China.
No. You know me very well. I speak very much about all of this. And you know that. Even with Hamas before.
Michelle did not. Yes, there are rules of war. But the rules of war do not mean that war is not hell, that civilians don't die. There's a reason war is awful, because in every war, children die.
Of course, yeah.
Families die. But what's happening here is that people are using that simplistic, ugly fact as evidence of something. The fact that children and families are dying, I'm sorry to say this, is not evidence of anything other than there's a war going on. It is not even a small amount of evidence that Israel is doing anything wrong. To say that, and they may be doing things wrong, you need much more specific evidence. Instead, 95% we hear is people are dying. We show pictures of people dying. We see people do this. And you could literally take this from any war, anywhere in the world, at any time. You want to look at what Dresden looked like, or not even Dresden, any battlefield in the Second World War on any side.
So you're saying eventually, if there is, after the war is done and there's, you know, evidence and gathered, you can you'll be okay with with the arrest warrants and stuff like that, or it's still
Listen,
going to be?
listen. I mean, I don't know if Israel would do it in this case, but it shouldn't go unnoticed that Israel has prosecuted many of its leaders for various things, and Israel did not. They didn't put him in jail. I don't know if maybe he belonged in jail, but they had a whole proceeding against Ariel Sharon after the Palestinian Christians murdered the Muslims in Sabra and Shatila camps. Israel does not have, I wouldn't say it's a perfect record, but it's probably better than most nations. Israel has a record of using its judiciary to scrutinize the behavior of its leaders. Olmert, the prime minister of Israel, went to jail, not for a war crime, but I'm saying for something much less than a war crime. So, again, I don't know if Israel would do it. I don't want to be naive, because it would be tough for them to arrest Netanyahu for a war crime, because they don't want to send that message to the world. I don't know what's possible, but I do know this, and I think Bassam would agree with me. The left-wing Israeli press is merciless to Netanyahu, and they are the most aggressive and most reliable communicator of every fact you would need to know to form an opinion about whether or not Israel is committing war crimes. As a matter of fact, when I see something on Twitter, I don't believe it until I read it in Haaretz. And once I read it in Haaretz, I find it very hard to assume it's not true, because they're very thorough. And I'm talking a lot, but I would ask Bassam. I did a podcast with this guy, Michael Hauser Tov. He's a Hamas. He's a Hassan reporter. He's a Haaretz reporter. And he had an article there about amputations in the Israeli, in the ad hoc prison camps, where they had Hamas people, or allegedly Hamas people, or terrorists bound, and they were binding their arms in such a way that it was cutting off the circulation, and there was a certain number of amputations. And a whistleblower doctor blew the whistle on this, and they wrote an article about it in Haaretz. And I was so disgusted by reading this, I said to myself, you know what? I can't look the other way on this. I would certainly be screaming bloody murder if they were doing it to the Jews. So I had the guy on, and I interviewed him about what's going on there. And I invite you to listen to that interview, because I was expecting the worst. But actually what I found was a quite patriotic Israeli journalist who did not hate his country, and as a matter of fact, was very defensive of the procedures that his country was taking to bring this to an end. It was 100% the opposite of what I was expecting. All of which is to say that Israel does very much report on its abuses and outrages and mistakes. And nevertheless, the same people reporting on that, they don't have the same cynical, hateful view of Israel that I would have expected that they have. They actually believe Israel's institutions are pretty good. It's tough. It's tough. I really like it. It's a short interview. It's like a half an hour long. I really like it if you listen to it. I'll put it in the thing. I think you're going to find it very interesting.
I just before I'll say one thing, and then we'll move on to last question. Is again, I see what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of the stuff that Israel does, but the world also have to watch, and the world also have to be the judge of what's going on. And if anybody held against a war crime, they should be pay for it. But
of course,
there is one very interesting, actually also an article was in Haaretz that I wrote. It was, if Israeli soldier, and I'll ask you this, but I invite everybody, I'll leave it the link. It's a very good article. If an Israeli soldiers go in Gaza and try to shoot someone, and that person is not Hamas, it's civilian, and he shoots back at him, is that resistance or is that Hamas? That was a beautiful article, actually. It's very, very good about, it's very fair. So, Bassam, last question. If you were, and before that, I want to say to everybody, we have a very amazing guest today, obviously. Next week, I'm very looking forward to that. We're going to have the mother of one of the hostages still kept in Hamas. We can see it. No, we can see the shirt. What does it say?
No. I have to run out the door. I was just getting my clothes ready.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah. The mother of one of the hostages in Israel, and you know, she is amazing, and I'm looking forward to that next week. But Bassam, what would you advise if you were the first advisor to the president of the United States, whoever it is? What should be the policies for Israel, Palestinian state or not, all that? What would be your advice to them?
Well, I would probably advise that to start with, a ceasefire needs to happen on both sides. I would also very heavily push the Israeli government to acknowledge that in order for a first step to occur, there does need to be a recognition of a Palestinian state. I think that's a very, very important step.
Who would be the leader?
That I don't know the answer to that question, but I think that's a very important step, though, and I think that that's a very difficult step for to want to accept, as far as my understanding goes. But personally, I think that would be where this conversation would need to start.
But Bassam, go ahead, finish. Sorry, finish.
No, I'm curious about what you think about that.
Yeah, I had this argument with somebody yesterday.
Do you ever have a conversation? Is it always arguments?
No conversations. I don't think they should recognize a Palestinian state, and Hatem touched on it, because if the leadership is going to be likely Hamas, and it would be, all the polls show that it would be. I mean, listen, it's just symbolic, right? Because 242 requires a negotiation. We don't know what the borders are. We don't know if they can be militarized. Obviously, it can't be militarized. We don't know what about the right of return. All the elements that need to be settled would not be settled before an actual state could get on its feet. So it's just a symbolic recognition. A symbolic recognition as a reward to atrocities. It to me, it'd be like, rewarding the Germans with a state because the Nazis did something there. And if there were a state tomorrow, what would happen? Well, immediately Hamas would take over and start firing rockets into Israel, but not just from Gaza, but from the West Bank. And we know this, I think you'll agree, there would most likely be a bloody civil war among the Palestinians. So a state tomorrow would be bad for Israel and bad for the Palestinians.
But no, you're looking at this like this began on the 7th. That's not the case. No,
I'm not. I'm looking at it. You could start it on any date, but if Olmert, let's start in 2008. If Olmert walked out of the negotiation in 2008, and then walked out on Barack Obama in 2014, and if he's not even floating his demands for a Palestinian state, and as a matter of fact, I think many of us suspect he actually doesn't want the Palestinian state. He might be afraid of what would happen to him the second it was declared, as much as anybody else. He doesn't want to see his executed in the town square. We don't. I don't know. Have we recognized the Kurdish state? I mean, to say that there's a people out there who we would like to have self-determination is one thing. To say that, to recognize their state, despite the fact that A, they have walked out of negotiations for their state, and B, their leadership does not accept the notion of a confined state. This is more than I can get behind.
If there is a leadership that, Palestinian leadership, well, one thing I do think that it should be
I
a
understand
state.
what you're saying.
Yeah, it should be a state. We have obviously from the history, when you put if we put somebody in power, like like in Iraq or Afghanistan, it never works. You know, it have to be somebody, and there's so many Palestinian leaders are capable. They need to, you know, of running this. I think
Listen,
if it's not Hamas,
let me put it this way: if I could be close to, if we could all be close to convinced that the following were true, there's a Palestinian people there who want to live side by side with Israel. They came close to negotiation in 2008. They're ready to accept something along those lines now, but Israel just won't sit down with them. You know, there's some land swaps. They want 1% more. They're at the final stages of the agreement. Everybody kind of knows what the two states are going to look like. Arab sites will be Arab, Jewish sites will be Jewish. And if only Israel would agree to this, then that would be the end of the conflict. The Palestinian dream would be fulfilled and there'd be no more violence. If that were the general truth in the world, I would absolutely be with you guys. Yes, every country should recognize a Palestinian state now. But my belief is that it's almost the opposite. There is a hunger there now to destroy Israel, and it's ramped up from where it was just years ago. If there was a democracy there, it would elect resoundingly the leadership that would reject exactly what it is that I'm saying now. And that the only reason the Israeli people are not on board with this right now is because of the fear of violence. They see what's in Gaza, and they'll say, well, if I have a state, we're going to have Gaza in Jerusalem. We can't have Gaza on the border of Jerusalem. You know, the West Bank border's there, right? We can't have that. So we're not against, we want these people to have a state, many of them, a critical mass. I'd say 70, 75% of Israelis say, but you can't expect us to live that way. Did you see what happened to October 7th? And now you're telling us they should have a state?
but
Not because of what happened on October 7th. Do you understand what their ideology is? Have you seen the polls in the West Bank of how they support Hamas?
yeah, see, but you got to take also responsibility. If there's going to be a state, you will not, or your leader will not fund Hamas, will not help Hamas.
Do you believe the difference between Hamas being in charge and not Hamas is the fact that Qatar allowed them some money and Netanyahu allowed it? Do you think they can smuggle in rockets but not cash?
No, I don't think that they can. I don't think that they should be there at all. But I don't think they should be, you know, part of the, and you know that part of the Israeli policy was to have two different. I know you got to go, but
Hatem, it's such a silly. Can't you ever blame them?
I blame
Netanyahu. You're right. He looked the other way. Every Israeli prime minister. So did Gallant, and so did not Bennett. They all looked the other way as money was smuggled in to Hamas because they thought this was a way of buying Hamas off.
Yeah, but I didn't say, you said, can you blame him? I said, of course I did. I said, but also you have to recognize one part of the policies that need to change.
Hamas ideology has existed before that and will exist after that. And you know goddamn well it has nothing to do with that. This is why you upset me. You know.
I know, and I say it. I'm saying
what I'm saying has nothing to do with the fact that that Israel looked the other way and Hamas got money from Qatar. It's not an honest thing to say.
It's part of it. It's part of it.
No, it's zero. It's zero. It's zero to do with it. It's zero. It's zero. If it was that easy to get rid of Hamas, then this war wouldn't be so difficult. If simply cutting off the spigot of some cash would have gotten rid of Hamas, then what is going on with this war?
I'm talking about the idea of Hamas continuous. If you shut everything, then you'll be able. But you know, Palestinian people, I think they should have a state. They should be a leader, not Hamas, not Hamas. You know. And not what's his name?
But they support Hamas. They don't support a non-violent. There's no party out there that says the 2008 party says like what's his name? Nabil Amr. We should have taken it. We were dishonest. Now we made a mistake. Let's take the deal. We want certain changes to it. There's no political party within Palestine that I know of which is saying, let's sit back down with the Israelis, pick up where we left off, and settle that deal we almost made. That doesn't exist. Because it doesn't exist, I call bullshit on everything. And if it did exist, like Mandela existed. Like Mandela existed. That's the difference. So Mandela existed. You could talk to Mandela and say, How could they not give these people what they want? Listen to what they're saying. They
All right.
want to live in peace and equality with the whites.
Well,
There is no Palestinian
you need to listen
Mandela.
to what I'm saying. When you come to Palestine,
No,
you say there's
no, you're not.
no
Hold on.
party.
Hatem, you're not listening to what I'm saying because you're not
I
going to
am.
respond. You're not. I guarantee you, whatever's going to come out of your mouth now is not a response to what I just said.
Okay,
You're going to talk. You're going to now talk about Netanyahu. Go ahead, do it.
No, the response is when you talked about Palestinian, you said there's no party coming out. And when you talk about, you say no Mandela, one person. There's a lot of Palestinians leader around the world in TV all the time. You see them talking about wanting peace. Am I
Mandela
right,
is not
Bassam?
one person. Mandela spoke for his people. Nobody disputed that.
I get it. I'm saying there is a lot
So
of Palestinians
is there an equivalent
capable.
in the? Do you
I think
if there were an election tomorrow, who would win the election?
Election?
Yeah, if the Palestinians could elect their leader, who would their leader be?
Well, who's running? Well, assuming no Hamas,
anybody
right?
anybody who wants to run.
You're talking about after Hamas is done.
No, talking about today. It would be Hamas. We know this.
I don't know if Hamas is control of if the election is held with no fear, Hamas will not win.
Why did
Bassam, what do you think?
Why did Arafat keep saying to Clinton, "You're going to get me killed. You're going to get me killed. You're going to get me killed"? Why was that his mantra?
Because he's not a true leader, I think.
Because he was going to get him killed.
Bassam, do you agree? Last thing before we go.
No, I do agree with you. I mean, that's always been the MO of every single Middle Eastern country. You can't have real elections in the Middle East in the way that is structured. If there was true freedom and true honesty, then no, I don't think that Hamas would actually win an election. But there does have to be. This is the point of what both of you actually said, is that there has to be a real alternative, yes. Right? And who that alternative is, I can't speak to that. But
you know a lot of people that speak, right?
But to your point, there are a lot of people that have that potential, right? Do they need the support and the resources? Maybe that's where the energy should be directed towards, instead trying to say otherwise. Instead of trying to say, well, only focused on Hamas. Let's try to find an alternative.
My Arabic brothers, I want to tell you the following. I have to leave because I have a 3:00 appointment in the city. I'm already going to be late too. I'm sorry I got mad. I got my Jew up, and I appreciate Bassam for being very kind and patient with me. I think despite what was said here, I think we actually all do in our hearts want peace and it's corny, but peace and fulfilling lives and brotherly love for the people of all these nations. None of us, I don't think, see this in religious terms, or certainly none of us are thinking that God is on our side or promised us anything. We may be skeptical of each other, but I think we all want every child to grow up to be able to enjoy the optimism that we feel in our lives, to do the things that we want to do and raise our children. So forgive me if I got hot, but and forgive me if I have to leave, but I mean that really from my heart, and I appreciate Bassam very much, and we should have him on again soon so I can let him speak some more without being interrupted. All right?
I can promise that part.
I don't think it's corny. I think that's what we all want. I think we all want to have peace and have those basic freedoms and abilities in life for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just words. I know we all actually do mean that. All right, I'm gonna go. Bye.
Now we can talk.
Love you
I'm
guys.
sorry.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Now.
Now you can speak in Arabic. Bye.
Are you going to the olive tree? All right, he's going. All right, Bassam, thank you so much for being patient and for all this. It's always great to have you. And like Noam say, again, he interrupts a lot and he says his point, and then he said, "I'm hot. I don't want to talk about it." But he does, have the same common thing that we all have, is we want to, sometimes you want to defend. It's hard when you're in the middle of this, but I do think that the idea with the ICC and all this, that bad people are not only the one that have certain names, certain looks, they can come in suits and speak perfect English and still be bad, So
that's a fair point. I wish that was I wish that was also said in front of Noam too.
I did say, but he was yelling at the same time. So I hope I'm gonna tell him later. But if somebody want to follow you or get in touch with you, you want to share your information on social media?
I would look after the Syrian American Council. Search for them on Instagram and Facebook, Twitter, the whole deal. And support the Syrian American Council for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me on. Bye.
You should try to